I'm going to say something controversial, Anthony.
What's that?
Why do aliens want to come to Earth? We don't even love Earth that much.
I'm convinced it's a reality TV show, but $9.19 a gallon for gas? You know how many French fries I could buy?
How many miles per gallon, let's light years per gallon, do you think a UFO gets?
That's why they're not here.
That's why they're not here.
Diesel prices too high.
Diesel prices. All right, Isaiah, thank you for that. Right now, we're going to welcome our next live guest. We've got Danny Gomez here with us to check in on last week's episode of Net Zero Carbon and then introduce our guest from Convoy today. So, Danny, first off, thanks for joining. Second off, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with the conversion to electric vehicles in the space right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a hot topic. There's a lot of investments that are being made. I think the biggest criticism that we hear is around infrastructure and the ability for us to actually put this at scale. And so what's happening in transportation today is that we're introducing EV in the places where we actually can do it now, which is local delivery. So where the delivery radius for the vehicle isn't that far, so they can come back and charge. And people can, we can cycle through vehicles. We've talked about long haul as being a problem, and EV charging just in general needs to be more ubiquitous. And so there's signals from the government that they're willing to make those investments. And so it's a very interesting time for electric vehicle and for all the things that feed into electric vehicles. So we think about the infrastructure for the power grids and renewable energy that's going to feed into this, right? We want to make the full cycle as clean as possible. And so having changes into what the generation mix of power. So that's, are we using hydro, nuclear, coal, solar, wind? And so the more we can push towards those sustainable energies, the better. And so, yeah, as you know, on Net Zero Carbon, we're trying to surface all of these different possibilities. And so having Convoy, bring this up as something we should be talking about is super important. So we're excited to dig in.
Danny, before we get into your guest, I want to get your thoughts on that kind of grid infrastructure and specifically around Texas and the Texas grid. We all know that Texas operates on its own independent power grid for the majority of the state, led by Oncor. And during the summer, during times like this, it doesn't perform well. It doesn't do a good job, right? And you've got Oncor telling people when it gets hot outside, and hot being like 95 plus, they're talking people to conserve power, whether that's not running your AC or not running your major appliances. Do you think that as we transition to this kind of EV rollout, that there would be a threat for EVs to be kind of regulated to the point where they're not allowed to be used during times of high stress on the power grid?
Yeah, that's on point. I mean, we have to think as we increase the demand for electricity, and I think one of the articles that Convoy shared says that U.S. Power demand would go by 25% at a kind of a within the next 10 to 20 years if we track like we're supposed to in terms of EV adoption. And so we have to be smarter about how we stress that system, or how we protect the system from being stressed rather. And also I think battery electric storage is one of the things around the electricity market that is just starting and really transforms the whole industry. Because for those who aren't familiar with how the power system works now is there's a full balancing of supply and demand, because there is no real good way to store power like you can store gas or oil, right? And so to date, the grids have had to have this really fine balance. And so when you have times that are unforeseen, where there's much more demand than anyone can anticipate, the power system doesn't really it's not really built to just flip on and off really quick. So it's, there's been a lot of investments in what they call super peak plants, but the ability for us to store the energy is really the transformative part in this whole equation. Because, think about, generating solar power in the middle of the day and being able to store that for use at night. That really shifts how we think about power and how the power markets really just operate in general.
And Danny, let's continue this conversation by bringing on our next guest here. We have Kiana Van Ways, corporate sustainability analyst over from Convoy. Kiana, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
We're excited for you to kind of give your perspective on this conversation as well. So Danny, I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Kiana, thanks for joining us. A very timely topic for you guys to be just sending over some articles for us to talk about. You, like me, have been in the conversations about trying to decarbonize transportation, and EV has been a hot topic. Can you talk about what's changing, kind of like the ground shifting beneath our feet here as administration makes some changes in terms of investments?
Yeah, absolutely. So recently, Bloomberg NEF, the research provider for Bloomberg, published its long-term electric vehicle outlook this month that focuses specifically on 2, 3, 4, and more wheels. The findings show that electric vehicles are taking off faster than expected. And soon, the global fleet of gas cars will start to shrink and profoundly affect transportation and energy sectors. With last year's global auto sales behind us, the outlook definitively points to a peak of more than a century-long trend of increasing internal combustion engine car sales. This is a notable shift that has happened, that consumer attitudes are changing fast. The adoption of EVs has accelerated since 2020, despite the outlooks had predicted. And also despite COVID-19, supply chain crunches, and trouble sourcing critical minerals. There are other contributing factors, including decades-long regulatory pressures from governments and countries to meet decarbonization goals. We're expecting that the world's fleet of internal combustion cars, excluding hybrids and plug-in hybrids, will peak at just over 1.2 billion this year and dropping only slightly in 2023. And then after that, the decline is marked based off of the outlook that was published. By the end of the next decade, as we approach 2040, the global fleet of cars with an engine rather than a battery or fuel cell will be less than half the size it is today. While this shift in passenger vehicle sales is great news for the net zero transition of the transportation industry as a whole, which accounts for 19% of total global greenhouse gas emissions, we can't ignore the sweeping implications and risks and challenges that come with this transition. And that really brings us to the meat of our discussion today, Danny, on the risks and challenges of increased EV adoption. You mentioned before, some of the grid limitations and infrastructure limitations that we're facing. EV is a great technology, but it's not the only solution in transportation today. With hydrogen and transition fuels, amongst many other great technologies, they all face this similar critical issue, which is around the infrastructure challenges. One question that continues to be raised in the trucking industry is, the U.S. power grid ready to handle this surge of electric vehicles? And you mentioned before the 25%. Rocky Mountain Institute study stated that if every American switched over to electric passenger vehicles, the United States could end up using roughly 25% more electricity than it does today. And as we've seen with the Texas overuse of the grids, it could cause a complete collapse of the entire U.S. Energy system. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. From utilities need to build out power plants and upgrade their transmission networks. And this is really costly and can take a lot of time. Biden also has a goal of building 500,000 new public chargers by 2030. And there's a lot of challenges that come with this, public spending that needs to occur and alignment across, politicians, states, and the governments to implement the installing the chargers in a timely basis to meet that 2030 goal. And then another issue is the difficulty around having a secure, responsible supply of critical minerals to support EVs. EVs actually use 6 times the amount of critical minerals than an internal combustion engine. And it is causing a significant amount of supply chain issues in order to obtain these critical minerals. And lastly, in the segment right before, we're in the middle of a semiconductor shortage. So there's all of these risks that we're facing today.
Pausing on the batteries and trying to source the right materials to make the batteries. And one myth about EVs is that they are from a carbon footprint perspective, that they're more carbon intensive than an internal combustion engine. And so I think it's helpful to bring some light around that. Is it true that off the line, yes, they may be more carbon intensive, but the real savings come over the lifetime of the vehicle, as obviously there's zero tailpipe emissions off of an EV, and that the cumulative effect of the ICE vehicles, is that where the difference comes in?
Yeah, you really hit it exactly how where the carbon emissions really lie. And there's also, with the transition to electric vehicles and sourcing these critical minerals, the availability of getting responsibly sourcing these critical minerals. This is one of the biggest challenges. So there's no like green electric vehicles aren't the solution across the board. It's not just the greener choice. There's a whole new set of environmental challenges that we're weighing as we look to scale up electric vehicle usage.
Yeah, it's so good to get excited about these breakthroughs or these investments, or even just a better understanding of how we implement certain solutions across transportation. But there's a lot of nuances, especially when you think about it, just below the surface, right? Like, not everyone thinks about the impact to the power grid. Not everyone thinks about sustainably sourcing materials. When you look across, and this is a dangerous question or hard one to ask or answer, when you look across these solutions, which ones are you most excited about? I mean, you mentioned a lot of the transition fuels and hydrogen and EV, and we need to push all of them. But does one stick out more than the other in terms of like a really long-term sustainable, let's think like 50, 100 years?
Yeah, that's a great question, Danny. I think one of the things that I have to keep reminding myself is that all of these different solutions need to really play together. And regionally, some of them may be a better solution in certain areas versus in other areas. So electric adoption may happen much faster in California, and it may make a lot more sense there. But in Nebraska and some places in the Midwest where gas stations are, farther apart, and there's it may not make as much sense in certain regions. So I think the thing I'm most excited about is knowing that with the electric car transition, hydrogen, and all these alternative fuels that we're looking at, there's still going to be a gap in the reaching our decarbonization goals. And so I think what I'm most excited about is the emerging technologies that are going to be coming in the next few years that really will help us to hit that, to close that gap and really bring us down to a net zero target. I'm also really excited about seeing some of these technologies really start to take off and learn from pilots that are happening in certain areas so that we can take learnings and improve upon. So test, iterate, and quickly learn from what's happening today so that we can continue to drive progress in this area and achieve net zero ultimately. Is there anyone that you're really most excited about?
Carbon capture, for me, and creating fuels off of that seems really interesting. And it's just for me, right? This is all of us are learning along the way, right? And so I think it's helpful for us all to surface as we move through this journey, as much as we're gleaning from it. For me, and we're talking this Friday on net zero carbon about regeneration and agriculture and how that plays a role in really the whole ecosystem. And I think it's just been very an eye-opening, and it's just peeling away the layers. And so we appreciate you coming on, sharing your knowledge, and learning alongside with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Both for being part of this Net Zero Carbon segment. Of course, you can always catch our interviews on Monday mornings right here on Freightwaves.